Frankfurt, 1800. They said Mayer Amschel died in 1812. That is what the records say. That is what the plaques say. That is what every encyclopedia, every textbook, every approved history will tell you. But in 1800, 12 years before his recorded death, a letter was sent from a Prussian count to his brother in Cologne. It has never been officially catalogued. It surfaced once, briefly, at a private estate auction in Zurich in 1987, then vanished before it could be photographed. One researcher, a man named Gotthold Weiser, claimed to have read it. He transcribed one paragraph before the letter was removed from his hands. "I have seen the old merchant," Weiser recalled it reading. "He has not aged, not one day. His sons have lines around their eyes. He does not. He stood at the window, and the candle threw no shadow behind him, and I said nothing. Neither did he. But he smiled, and I understood then that I had been counted." Weiser disappeared 4 years later. His notes were found in a safety deposit box in Basel. Every page was blank except the last, which had a single sentence written in a hand that was not his. The counting never stops. Before we go any further, if you're new here or you're a frequent viewer, do well to hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from now. Let's get right into it. The unmarked book. You remember it from part 1. The red-bound book Mayer carried back from his 7 nights of disappearance. The one no one was ever allowed to read. The one historians cannot place. The one that appeared in no inventory, no will, no estate record. But it was seen 3 times, not the first time. A young scribe hired to copy Mayer's correspondence in 1793 claims he entered the study too early, before the morning candle had been lit. In the half-dark, the book sat open on the desk. He described what he saw to his priest, who recorded it. The pages, he said, were not made of paper. They were thin, almost translucent, and they moved. Not turned by wind, moved, as if something beneath them was breathing. The text was not ink. It was darker than ink. It was the kind of dark you see when you press your palms into your eyes. He ran. He did not return. The second time, 1801. A visiting rabbi, a man of learning and some renown, was received by Mayer and left after 1 hour. He refused to say what they had discussed. What he did say, only once, asked to his most trusted student, was this: "There is a book in that house that should not exist in any language I know, and yet I understood every word. I wish I had not." The third time, the book was seen by a child, a girl 7 years old, daughter of one of Mayer's household staff. She wandered into his study on a winter afternoon in 1804. She came back out holding her ears. She said the book was singing, not with music, with names, long, long names that had no end. Her mother pulled her from the room, and they were dismissed from the house that same evening. The girl grew up, married, moved to Bavaria, had children of her own. She never entered a library again for the rest of her life. Not once. When asked why, she said only, "Because I know what's inside them now." The book has not been seen since Mayer's death, or since what they call his death. No one has ever found it in the estate. No one has ever found it anywhere, but people keep hearing it. The 5 sons, what the letters actually were. In part 1, we told you about the sealed letters, how Mayer gathered his 5 sons in the windowless chamber beneath the synagogue before sending them to London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt. How each son received a letter. How one burned his, one buried his, one framed his behind a black veil. We told you one refused to say what was inside. Now we go deeper. Because 3 sources, One, a deathbed confession recorded by a Viennese priest in 1841. One, a diary fragment recovered from a water-damaged estate in Lyon. And one, a letter written by a grandson and never sent. All describe, in different words, the same essential content. The letters were not instructions. They were not maps. They were not financial arrangements. They were permissions. Permission to enter. Permissions to use. Permission to call upon something that Mayer had already made arrangements with. Something that lived. The sources agree on this word. Lived, in the space between money and power. In the architecture of debt. In the silence that follows when a king signs his name to a document he doesn't fully understand. The grandson's unsent letter is the most specific. He wrote in part that his father had described the letter as a covenant receipt, proof that the price had been agreed, that the service would be rendered, and that the terms were already in motion before any of the sons were born. What terms? The deathbed priest's record is the only one that goes further, and the dying man, a Rothschild associate, name withheld, spoke of what he called the exchange. That the family had been granted something ancient, not wealth. Wealth was a symptom. What they had been granted was architecture, the ability to see structures that others couldn't, the load-bearing beams of civilization, where to apply pressure, where things would crack, where things would hold. And in exchange, the priest stopped writing mid-sentence. The rest of the page is water-stained into illegibility, except for 2 words at the very bottom. One generation. The man in red. His name. In part 1, he was a presence. A figure at the edge of photographs. A face on no face. A red coat, a lion cufflink, muddy footprints leading inward and never out. Now we tell you what those closest to the family have always called him, or in hushed rooms and never twice to the same person. Der Rote Zeuge, the red witness. He does not act. He observes. He is present at every moment of significance, every contract, every coronation attended by Rothschild money, every war financed from their vaults, every border redrawn by their influence. He watches, he records. But recorded in what? And for whom? A staff member at the London estate, one of the longest-serving 41 years in service, a man named only as J.H. in the household register, gave a private account to his son in 1951. The son wrote it down. It was passed to a researcher in 1999, who included 3 lines of it in an unpublished manuscript before dying of a stroke at the age of 44. J.H. had seen the man in red twice. The first time from a distance, standing motionless in the garden at 3 a.m., and the second time far closer. He had been carrying linens down a corridor when a door opened, a door that according to floor plans did not open onto anything. And the man in red stood in the frame. J.H. said he could not see a face, not because it was hidden, not because of shadow. Simply, where a face should be, there was nothing. A surface, smooth, without feature, like a wall that had forgotten what it was supposed to become. The man in red raised one hand. Not a wave, not a threat. J.H. described it as the way a man raises his hand when he is marking something, noting it down, registering it, then the door closed. J.H. said he felt nothing in the moment. Not fear, not cold, nothing. As though the part of him that was supposed to react had simply been switched off. He felt it 3 days later. He woke at 3:13 a.m., nor he noted the exact time, with a certainty that something in him had been changed, not taken, marked, like a page in a ledger, like a name entered into a column. J.H. lived to the age of 91. He never spoke of it again, but every night for 40 years, he left a candle burning on his windowsill. He never said why. His son thought it was to help the man in red find him again, or possibly to make sure he could see him coming. The Ritual of the 13 Chairs. Vienna, 1887. The estate hosted an event that appears in no official guest record. It was inferred later from a single source, the private diary of a domestic worker named Elsa Brenner, discovered behind a loosened brick in a converted servants' quarters in 1964. Elsa was 22. She had worked the estate for 3 months. She wrote of a preparation that took 11 days. Not cleaning, not cooking, something else. 13 chairs were arranged in a sub-basement room she had never been permitted to enter. Not in a circle, in a spiral. The outermost chair pointed east. The innermost, the 13th, the smallest, which she noted appeared older than the house itself, was turned to face a wall on which nothing hung. Nothing, that is, except a single iron hook. No painting, no mirror, no ornament. Just the hook. She does not describe who sat in the chairs. She could not see their faces. She wrote only that they were still, completely still. Still in the way that sleeping people are not still. Still in the way that certain old things are still, because they have already done everything they came to do. She heard, from outside the door, a sound she described as a low continuous chord, as though the house itself was humming a note it had always known, but never before spoken aloud. The event lasted from dusk to the moment before dawn. When it ended, the chairs were gone. Not moved. Gone. The iron hook remained. She checked the wall for seams, for trapdoors, for evidence of removal. Nothing. She wrote her final diary entry 2 days later. It read, "I do not know what they are waiting for, but I know now that they are patient. The waiting is the ritual. The ritual never ends." She gave her notice the following morning. She moved to a village in Styria, married a farmer, had 4 children, died at 79. She kept a small iron hook above her door until her death. Her granddaughter still has it. She was never told why. What happens in the vaults? Every major Rothschild estate contains a vault that is deeper than any structural requirement demands. In London, the sub-basement extends to a depth that engineers who reviewed the plans in 1903 described as architecturally inexplicable. The foundation would not require it. The storage would not require it. There is no recorded reason for the depth. In Paris, a fire inspector who accessed the lower vault in 1931 filed a routine report, then filed an addendum 2 hours later. The addendum read, "I am required to note that the lower section of the storage area contains a room not reflected on any submitted plans. I entered briefly. I am not able to provide a description of its contents at this time. I am requesting reassignment from this district." His reassignment was granted. The addendum was stamped and filed, and no follow-up inspection occurred. In Frankfurt, during the post-war cataloging of seized estates, a records clerk noted a discrepancy. The vault inventory listed, in neat columns, various expected contents: documents, currency, securities, personal effects. At the bottom of the page, in a different hand, in different ink, and in a language the clerk identified as neither German, French, nor Latin, was a single additional entry. He could not read it. He could not identify the language. He copied the symbols as precisely as he could into a margin note. No linguist has since been able to place the script. One specialist said the symbols were structurally consistent with a writing system, but not one documented in any archive I know of. The symbols have been seen elsewhere. On the walls of the disappearing room in Vienna, on the base of the chair in that sealed chamber, on the unmarked grave in Frankfurt that animals refused to pass. And according to one source, a man who worked vault security for 8 years and spoke to a journalist under the condition of complete anonymity in 2004, on the door at the very bottom of the London vault. Not carved, not painted, grown, as though the symbols had always been there, slowly becoming visible over time. Like something written before the building existed, finally becoming legible. The journalist's recording was corrupted. The notes survived. He never published. He said only to a colleague over dinner 3 months later that some things are not ready to be known by people who are not ready to know them. He paused. Then he said, "And some things know whether you're ready or not." The price of the covenant, the missing generation. In part 1, we mentioned it briefly. The Frankfurt crypt, more than a dozen buried, only 11 in the official registry. One grave always damp, always colder, the animals. Now, the pattern. Researchers who have cross-referenced Rothschild birth and death records across 4 countries and 6 generations have noted an anomaly. In every generation, every single generation since Mayer, one member of the family dies between the ages of 23 and 27. Always male. Always the one who, by all accounts, was the most gifted. The one who understood the architecture most naturally. The one who, according to family correspondence, seemed to grasp, without being taught, what it had taken others decades to learn. In Mayer's generation, his eldest son, who died in Frankfurt in 1812. Same year as Mayer's recorded death. Same week, in the next generation, one nephew died in Paris at 26. Cause recorded as fever. His personal physician wrote in a private letter that there was no fever. He had been in perfect health. He simply stopped. The pattern holds across every generation documented. One life, early, the most promising one, the one who understood things. The deathbed priest's record, partially illegible, comes back here. Those 2 words at the bottom of the page. One generation, not one name. One generation, per cycle, per renewal. One life given back to whatever made the architecture possible in the first place. The family has never addressed this. There are no records of any internal discussion of the pattern. Either they do not see it, or they have always known and have chosen silence as the correct response to things that cannot be changed. One researcher who published a partial version of this theory in an academic journal in 1996 received a letter 3 weeks after publication. It contained no text, only a wax seal pressed into the paper. The seal bore the impression of 5 arrows and a red circle around each one. He withdrew the paper. He cited personal reasons. He retired that year despite being 43 and moved to a remote part of Norway where, by all accounts, he lives quietly and does not read history anymore. He still checks his mail every morning. He still checks it twice. The last sighting, the one that is still open, a private art event. Location withheld by request of 2 attendees who gave accounts independently, months apart, without knowledge of each other, and described the same thing. A security guard, private contractor, no Rothschild affiliation, took a post outside a room he was told to consider sealed for the evening. He stood there for 4 hours without incident. Then, at 3:10 a.m., he heard something from inside the sealed room. Not movement, not voices. A sound he described as breathing. Not one breath. Many. Rhythmic, in unison. He radioed his supervisor. No response. He tried the door. It opened. Inside, darkness. He turned on his torch. The beam caught one thing before he stepped back and closed the door and did not open it again. The chairs. 13 of them. Spiral. Innermost one facing a bare wall. And on the wall, glowing faintly, glowing, the symbols. The same symbols from the vault. from the crypt, and from the room that disappeared in Vienna. He filed no report. He told no one at his company. He quit the following day by text message. He told one person, his brother, over the phone 6 weeks later. Just one detail he had left out of his account when asked. The chairs weren't empty. He didn't see faces. He didn't hear voices. But the chairs, all 13 of them, were occupied. He could tell by the weight of the room, by the pressure of attention directed at him from 13 points in the dark. He said, "They weren't surprised I opened the door. They were waiting for someone to finally do it." His brother asked what he did next. He said he closed the door. He stood in the corridor. He waited for his heartbeat to return to normal. And then he looked down. At the bottom of the door, pushed through from the other side, was a folded piece of paper. He opened it. One sentence, handwritten, in English, in a hand that was neat, clean, and patient. "You have been counted. You found part 1. You watched it through. You searched for part 2. Every step was yours. Every step was noted. The counting never stops. The spiral goes inward. The chair that's meant for you has always been there. It is the one that faces the wall. And on that wall, your name is already written. It's been there longer than you've been alive. Do well to hit the subscribe button and turn on post notification so you don't miss out on our next upload. See y'all in the next video.